Okay, well, we're here, and I'm excited. We get to talk about some really important and wonderful things about your legacy, about spiritual histories, about the experiences that we had. How can we do what we do, and what's the importance of keeping track of that and sharing these stories with other people? I want to begin with talking about my favorite book, and that would be the Book of Mormon. And we know that Nephi was born of goodly parents. We all remember Nephi, 1 Nephi 1:1. How do we know he was born of goodly parents? Well, it was recorded. Somebody put it down. Someone put the experience down. And how does Nephi know all about his parents' experience? Well, they told him the stories. Nephi, this is what's going on. This is what I think about the world. This is Lehi. When Lehi gets when God tells Lehi, you're going to move, you got to go somewhere else, and he has to tell Sarah, we're leaving Jerusalem, we're going to go somewhere else. Think about what kind of a story that is. I'm sure that was not easy to say. I'm sure that Lehi didn't, hey, we're just going to leave everything. We're going to go ahead and move out and leave all of our stuff here, and welcome, come in. We're going to leave all of our stuff here. We're going to go somewhere else. God's taking me somewhere else. Really? I imagine that in that dialogue there was some head scratching. It's like, okay, where are we going? What are we going to do? And why is that important? That's all part of the story. That's what brings it real to all of us. So it's not just I did this and I did that. So we learn all of this from these stories, and we want to follow the same example in the Book of Mormon. Even the Book of Mormon, we know, is a history of an ancient civilization on this continent. And how did they pass on their stories? Well, sometimes they did drawings. They had to move around. They had to know where the food was, all those kinds of things. But they also told the stories to the next generation. So they had a heritage to go with. Oh, this is what's important to you. It's important to me. This is how you handled it. That's an important part of this process. Not just I did this and I did that, but how did you accomplish it? What was a good experience about all of this? Because it was difficult, how did you get through it? How can I learn from that process and from your experience? We know that the ancient inhabitants of this continent also told their stories around campfires, in tribes, with their families, with word and song and tradition, lessons, advice. How do you do that? Let's bring it back to my experience. How do you milk a cow? I remember 13 when I had to milk a cow. It's taken me forever until they taught me, you kind of have to run it through, have it fill up while you're squeezing it out at the same time. I didn't get great at it. After a while, he said, why don't you let me finish? Because the cow's getting finished with their food, and they don't like to be here after they're done eating. So I had to let him. And he would just, but at least I understood the idea. So it transfers over to what I was doing. And you go back to the 1940s and the 1950s, it was a different kind of experience. People were at home, they sat around the radio, listen to the radio, or they would just talk and have time together as a family to talk about their experiences. I'll tell you one story. I've got lots of stories I want to tell you, but one that I can remember was when my father was young. So he was born in 1941. So in the 40s, one of his experiences was they would have dinner, and his dad had 5 brothers. Interestingly enough, I have 5 brothers. And so I should say there's 5 boys in my family, no girls. Kind of interesting, perhaps. But he remembers listening to his dad and his brothers just tell stories. And they served in World War II. They had all these different stories that were going on. And my dad would tell me that he would sit at the dinner table, literally, and just listening. I want to hear what happened. How did you experience this? What did you do? That's part of the history of back in the 40s and 50s. We would just talk about these things. We listen to the radio about stories. That's how I pass along our experiences to the next generation, so they understand what we went through. That helps them to know what they're going through and what they can do to get through it. I think in our modern day, part of the difficulty is that how do we pass it on to the next generation? How do we get them interested in it so that it's not just, yeah, that's what you did back in the olden days. And I'm not terribly interested in that. So how do we engage them in that? As we grew up, we all probably went through that phase of, the teenage me now kind of a generation. Didn't really want to know much about that. But eventually we grow into a place where we're ready to hear something. I'm curious about this. I want to know what your experience was. Maybe we come on some difficult things and we want to go back and talk to someone that's older than us. So what did you do in this experience? So we follow the story patterns. We want to do as our ancestors that even brought the Book of Mormon to us. They recorded their histories. They recorded their experiences and their stories and put it into scripture that we can follow. So what does that mean to us here? I've read the Book of Mormon. You have too. But what about your story? Your experiences matter. Your experiences matter and how you got through them. So what was in your experience that made it so great? What made it so hard? How'd you get through it? We want to know these things rather than just, I did these different, I worked in this job, I lived in this house, but what made it interesting to you? So how can we get our stories to our children? The story, the advice, the guidance, the personal revelations, and the counsel. There's a lot to our stories. Well, let's put it this way. In this generation, everyone's watching it here. And this is how it's going to work. And so what we do, that I'll show you with our project, is we make this available so that people can see these videos, your own personal documentaries. These are your stories that we help you with. And some examples would be when we come, and it's personal. Like we come to your home in your front room on the couch. We've got all the equipment, kind of like you're seeing being used here as well. And we talk to you, and it's a dialogue. I do the interviewing. And in this interviewing process, it's not just question, answer. It's not an interrogation. It's a dialogue. It's a structure. It's well, this is what's happened to me. And I always tell people this too. Tears are acceptable. And I'm talking about me. I hear the absolute best stories as you relive them and tell the stories to me. And then I can engage with you in that story about, I can see that was a big thing for you. Tell me more about that. Was it a hard thing to get through? How'd you do it? What were your experiences with your family? Tell me about that. I'll tell you one that was funny. One of the funny ones that I learned. I was interviewing this individual in Idaho, and he was a farmer. And he was talking about his dad. And he had a farm. And so at the barn, he kept in the barn the whiskey and the tobacco. And his story was the whiskey was to help the cows in their digestion, and tobacco was to help wounds. And so I've said this before, as people go, you sure that's what that was for? I say, no one's here to judge anyone. So he had it in the barn. Well, the grandkids are like age 5-ish. They got into the barn. They found the whiskey. They found the tobacco. Tobacco first. They ate the tobacco, but they didn't know you got to spit it out. So they just started eating it. So they come out of the barn, and they're throwing up all over the dirt road, just all over the place. And Grandma's just like, oh, my grandkids, what are we going to do? And Grandpa just says, it's okay, don't worry about it. They're going to be just fine, and they're never going to do it again. So scared straight kind of experience. Then same thing with the whiskey. They got into the whiskey and started drinking that. And I said, what does a 5-year-old look like that's drunk? He says, they're always looking drunk. 5-year-olds, they're always doing this. There's not much difference. So same issue. Their bodies couldn't handle it, and they were throwing up on the dirt road again. So those are some experiences that kind of come on the fly as we're having this dialogue. And I've enjoyed those kinds of experiences. In fact, I'll tell you one other that was just a favorite of mine. 2 years ago, I was at Roots Tech and met some people that were also in Burley. And she just said, I have got to get my dad and mom's story. Can you just come? Can you come to Idaho and do that? We did. Went to Idaho, and met with a family, spent all day up there talking about their stories. And I want to tell you one that just kind of comes on the fly. As you're telling your stories, you have stories you want to tell. Your kids also know there's some stories that they want to hear. Oh, remember Dad to tell a story? Mom, remember that time when you want to capture those things. So I remember I was interviewing, talking with them, and I would get a text, and he just says, have them tell about the story about the calf. Okay. So I said, tell me about the calf you guys had. And so he starts telling me this story. Well, he and all of his friends are around 6, 7 years old, and it's right actually the beginning of World War II. One of the boys had a calf, and these group of friends now decided they were going to ride the calf. So they got a bridle ready, put it on the calf, and tried to get him going. And they got on the calf, and they were just doing all this stuff, and they're kicking it, and the calf won't move at all. And so they're thinking, how do we get this calf to move? So again, remind you of the ages, around 6, 7, and they're just geniuses, as we all know, 6 and 7-year-olds. So the one kid says, we need some spurs. Do any of you have some spurs? No, I don't have any spurs. And the next kid says, no, I don't have any spurs. And finally, the one kid says, well, my dad's got nails in his shed. So why don't we just pound the nail through our boots and make some spurs? And brilliant. That's what we're going to do. They pound the nail through their boots, and now there's a nail sticking out the end of the boot. And he does say, this man was 90 when I was interviewing him. He says, we were so proud of our spurs. We thought we were just the cat's meow. Man, look what we've made these great spurs. Then the kids are arguing, okay, who goes first? And I want to go first. No, I want to go first. No, I want to go first. And they argued, and then finally the one kid says, hey, it's my calf. I'm going first. Okay, you can go first. He gets on the calf, and he has those nails coming through the center of his boot, and he just kicks the nail straight into that calf. The calf goes straight in the air. And the kid smacks his head on a branch of a tree in this pasture area. Gives him a concussion. He hits the ground, knocks the wind out of him. So he's laying there now. And his friends are looking at him like, are you dead? They don't know what to do. And as he's laying there, he looks up at his friends and goes, your turn. So these are the kind of stories, and they wanted to make sure and grab that. Grandpa, tell that story. So these are some of the great stories that can come out in these interviews that we do and the ways that we can engage in your stories. But again, the point of it, we get them put here so when the kids are hearing these stories in a way they'll hear them. If you put a book in front of them, they may or may not read that book. Here, you can listen in your car. With a lot of the packages that we have, we do audio books with them as well. You can listen to them in your car as you're driving, and that's a great way to get the history and their experiences into the next generation. So, here we go. We create personalized film-style documentaries for you and your stories for your family and their legacy. Your legacy documentaries are a deeply personal journey through a lifetime of experiences. They provide an opportunity to reflect on one's life, sharing stories, dreams, and values through interviews, archival footage, photographs, and personal anecdotes.
Go to yourlegacystory.com today and start your free account. When you do, you can start to build the story you want told for your family and their posterity. Our new system allows you to type your story, upload the desired pictures to accompany the story, and choose the time length you desire. After building your story on our website, our film crew comes to your home and conducts a personal interview. Not long after, a final product will be available for your posterity to treasure for years to come.
From what I've learned in the personal interviews, your stories and experiences come from the heart. Your emotions become real, your families get to feel it again with you, and this becomes your legacy. And so, when we capture these stories, we become something that becomes real. And so my name is Doug Crockett. I should put that at the beginning. So what kind of stories do I do? What kind of stories do I leave? What should I even begin with? It becomes a daunting idea. So what stories do I leave for my family? We want to record these experiences before they're lost. I'm so happy that our friends from Idaho said, we've got to get Mom and Dad's story. And on that story, by the way, the kid hits knocks his head, loses his wind. We did the mom and the dad. They were still both there, around 90 years old. We interviewed her about an hour, interviewed Dad for about an hour, then we interviewed them together. They told their stories, and now they have a legacy that who's going to watch this? Their kids are. Sometimes moms and dads, oh, you don't need mine. You don't need that. I'm not that important. You are that important. Every life is that important. And the next generation is going to be watching and listening to it for the next 30 years. And so putting that real feeling, that real emotion, that real excitement is what we want to capture. Also, as you've learned, some of the greatest challenges and successes. So what are your greatest challenges and what are your greatest successes? Perhaps I can answer that with, they're kind of the same thing, aren't they? Once you push that rock all the way to the top of the mountain, then that becomes your greatest success. The next generation wants to know that. I'll give you one example. I came from the generation of kind of a father knows best, and I had a great father. In fact, I had a fantastic father. I've joked with him before, and I said, Dad, I think you're one of the 3 Nephites. You're just not telling me. And he smiled and said, oh, son. And I said, that was not a denial. But I had a great father. But he just kind of, in that generation, he just kind of handled everything. Everything's okay. Everything's all right. And then when I had my family, my oldest daughter ended up, she had muscular dystrophy. So she was in a wheelchair her whole life. That was hard stuff. That was hard things to get through, hard things to work out with my wife and my daughter and the family, and how do we handle this? So sometimes I couldn't just, it was hard for me to just say, yeah, everything's fine, everything's fine. Well, sometimes not everything's fine. And this is a hard thing we're doing. Life is a difficult challenge. It's meant to be a challenge. We're supposed to learn and grow. We learn that again from the Book of Mormon as well. What did Nephi have to do? We always jump to these stories, but I love Nephi for a lot of reasons. One, he stayed faithful. He could work hard. The 2 big things, he had to build a ship. For me, that would blow my mind. If I've never built a ship in my life, okay, build a ship, Doug. Well, okay, I'm going to need text, blueprints. I mean, I don't understand. Incredible what he was able to accomplish. But then to keep moving forward on that. Then, we know the story. I know you know this already. Go back and get the plates. We understand all of that. Layman tries to get them. Forget it, I won't give them to you. They go back again, bring all the gold. Here, Dad, I'm glad you were rich. I'm taking all your gold to go buy these plates so we can bring them with us. That should have really worked. It didn't. It took them, you're robbing from, keeping the gold, kicking you out. Now Nephi's in a spot. There's probably a pretty good argument saying, you know what, this didn't work. We should have to go back and tell Dad. So we tried twice, Dad, and he tried to kill us. Nephi had the ability to just say, well, no, we're going to try one more time. What are we going to do? I don't know. There's something about that. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have the plans worked out in my head right now, but I know we have to accomplish something, so let's move forward. I don't know what you're thinking, Nephi. This is crazy. Then you guys stay here. I'll go do it. You alone? We'll see what happens. Well, we know what happens. He sees Laban, and Laban's drunk and passed out. What should I do now? The Spirit tells him, kill Laban. I would think that would be really hard to do. I think for two reasons. One, I don't know if I can do this. And two, how strong do you have to be to cut someone's head off with a sword? I dare even think about it. I'll take care of this. I think the Spirit had to be strong enough with Nephi so we get this from the records. And your stories will tell us these records too. But Nephi had to be strong enough to do it and know that God was telling him to do it, so that he doesn't, in my mind, 30 years later think, I did kill a man. Oh, I don't know if I can handle that. I hope I'm okay with this. What kind of a testimony did he have to accomplish something that was asked of him that seemed incomprehensible? Challenges and successes. But now we know from the Book of Mormon the successes and the challenges that came from that, and we can learn from it. Now, your stories. This is the interesting part. Recording your own personal history is daunting. I don't blame you for that. It's a hard thing to even consider. How do I even begin this process? So what we're able to do with what we do here is that we have stories set up, questions set up for periods of your life. When you were young and in school, when you were in high school and then college and mission, and when you first got married, and your jobs and careers and families, and when these things all start to happen, we help you with the dialogue. What should I talk about here? What should I talk about here? Then when I come to do the interview with you, you know what you're going to talk about. I know what you're going to talk about, and we can begin the dialogue. And these stories, like I've shared with you, starts coming out. And like I've said, tears are acceptable, and I'm talking about me. And if you get emotional, that's a great thing. It passes so that everyone else knows that it was a great thing and a hard thing, but you went through it. So, some stories I want to leave with you. Some really good stories. By the way, I promised others, maybe you heard me say this, I'm going to tell you, not right now, but I'm going to tell you the greatest love story you've ever heard. You can guarantee on that. So I'll come back to that. But I want to talk about, so what do you want your posterity to remember about you? Sometimes I want to talk about some military stories as well. There's one where my grandfather's brother, my great uncle, and I didn't meet him. He lived in California. I wish I could have gone out there. My parents went out there and talked to him, and this is one of his stories. He was part of the reconnaissance for Normandy in World War II, Normandy Beach. In fact, I think it was the Omaha Beach that he went to. And in his story, they went on rafts that were powered by battery-operated engines. Why? Because they had to be quiet. If it was loud, they were going to hear you coming. So they went quietly up onto the beach. He and his platoon got all the way to the beach. They got to where there was plywood buildings on the beach. And he could hear on the other side of the plywood the people inside there were talking in German. And so he was able to tell to the guys that he was with, whispered to them, hey, they don't know we're here. The next morning, quite literally, all hell breaks loose. Horrible, horrible death and destruction at Normandy. He survived it. One of his experiences was this. During a firefight, he jumped under a truck for coverage. Turned out that truck was a German munitions truck. That's a little scary. Any errant bullet or anything like that gets into that truck, big problems. When he gets into the truck, he bonks heads with another soldier, so the helmets go clunk. And he looks at that soldier, and that soldier was General Bradley, for those who can remember him. And he looked at the general. The general said to my uncle, he says, what are you doing down here, soldier? And he just said, same thing you are, General. Trying to keep whatever's alive under this head, under this helmet still alive. Then the general said to him, can you get this truck out of here? Just drive it out of the theater. Get it over this hill and get it away from here. Yeah, I can. Will you do it? Yeah, I'll do it. As he was driving up this dirt road to get away from this whole theater area, there were bullets going off on every side of this road the whole way up. Talk about a miracle from God. Any one of those that gets into his cab and complete annihilation explosion. So they're going off on the road all the way through. He gets over the hill and does get away and is able to secure and park the car somewhere else and get out of it and get out of there okay. So later from that experience, he was given the Bronze Star for his bravery there in World War II. I didn't know any of this until folks came back from California and told me all about it. I said, man, I'm so glad you've told me this. I want to also share my father, again, born in 1941, so in the later or mid 40s, late 40s, he, here we go. This gives you an example of kind of what it was like in the 40s. In the back of his house was a pasture, like a horse pasture, similar to what you'd see here. And him and his cousin really had an issue with lighting fires. They just thought that was the greatest thing in the world to do. And kids nowadays certainly don't light fires, do they? So they were playing with matches. In fact, one of their stories Dad tells me, he says, I don't know how I survived that. They found some bullets, like 22 rifle bullets. They take it out there with a hammer and some rocks and are banging away on these bullets. They're firing off and they're just having a grand old time, not realizing the difficulties that they were in. But then there was one time where my dad and his cousin's name was Tom, and they were lighting fires, making little small fires and putting them out, and small fires, putting them out. Then they were in the back area, kind of where the pasture was, and they made fires there, putting them out, lighting the fires, putting them out, until they lit a fire and they couldn't put it out. What do? They're 6, 7 years old in that range. They're trying to put it out, and all it's doing is fanning the flames and making it bigger. So little 6-year-olds, when they start fires or they have a problem, they don't have the wherewithal to go in and tell an adult, right? They're scared. They run in the house and hide under their beds, just waiting for problems to go away. So what happened was they had to call, the pasture was on fire. They called the fire department. They had to come and take care of it. So the fire department comes out there. The police are out there too, and they had to put the fire out. And they don't know where Rod and Tom are. Rod is my dad. Where's Rod? Where's Tom? I don't know. Then they figured out. They went in the house, yelled for him, yelled. Finally, they start looking under the beds, and they see him, and they're under the bed crying because it's too much trauma. They pull him out. They got the fire put out. Then my grandfather, he passed away before my parents were even married. So I don't know. I didn't meet him in this life. I so look forward to it. He pulls the kids out with his brother. So Grandpa and his brother with his 2 boys, my dad and his cousin Tom. And he said, get in the car, boys. We are going to the police. I'm taking you to the police. And they are crying. No, please don't take us to the police. They drive into town. This is late 1940s. They get into town. They pull up to the police station. And then the father says to the 2 boys with his brother sitting next to him, he says, okay, now, boys, you stay here. I'm going to go in and talk to the sheriff, and then we'll see what he's going to do. So he closes the door, and he's heading into the police station. And Dad tells me, he says, me and Tom are just crying. And at the same time, his brother Dave, his name's Dave Crockett. And because my name is Doug Crockett, so that's the family name. So Dave is staying in the car with those 2 little boys. And his dad, my grandpa, is in talking to the sheriff. While he's in there talking to the sheriff, Dave is laying it on thick. You are going to jail. They're going to throw the key away. You're never coming out. The kids are just falling apart. So his dad, my grandpa, and the sheriff come out of the police station to the car. And Dad says, I remember because they walked up to the door and I could see the holster and the pistol on the side of the sheriff. So he's just scared as can be. And so then his dad says, I've talked with the sheriff. And that kid's crying. He says, the sheriff has talked to me and he said, if you can really, this time really promise to never, ever, ever light fires again, then maybe he can just let you come home. Scared him straight. The tears, oh, yes, 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 I'll never, 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 never again. So these are some of the stories that come from that generation. And I want to tell you one more, which is good. This is kind of about that age. There's Rod and Tom, little boys. And they were watching near their place in Pocatello. There's the train station there. As in the World War II, that was really big. And so they loved going to the park, which is kind of by that train station. And while they were there, the trains would come in, and they were on the other side of the fence, but they could see them coming, which was a big rush, kind of like these boys here. And the trains would come up, and they would just start going like this. Lay it on me, lay it on me. And so as they're getting all excited about all this, as these trains would come in, they're doing this kind of thing just to get them to blow their horns. And they would. They'd come right up and the horns would go, and the kids would just hit the ground, just overblown with emotion and excitement and the energy. Because any of you that have been on by the train tracks, when those trains come by, you can feel the energy going past you. Just as the earth shakes as it goes past you. And so these boys, just the thrill of a lifetime. Train would go by, they'd hit the ground. Can't believe how exciting this all was. And so these are some of the stories that occurred. Now this one is a story about me. Back in the 70s, I was about this age, 7, 8 years old, somewhere in that range. I remember my mother gave me some money. Don't remember how much it was, but she goes, can you ride on your bike and go to the local store, a little supermarket store that was close enough that I could ride my bike there. And I want you to buy me a container of lemon juice. They came in glass containers back in the day. I don't know if they still do now, but just get me a bottle of lemon juice. Okay. So she gave me the money. I go to the store. When I rode to the store, behind the store, there was a great big truck that no doubt was just giving a delivery at the store. But the engine was on, and I rode right in front of that truck, and it just scared me. I thought, that's a huge truck. When I come back with the lemon juice, in my mind, I didn't think that truck was going to see me. I said, it's too big. I'm too small. He's going to run over me and kill me. I can't do this. So I bought the lemon juice, and I thought, I'm going to go home a different way. I can't go back this way. I was so scared. I went the other way, but there was no easy way to my house that way. But there was an orchard that you could go through. And at this age, I'll go through the orchard. Well, and by the way, I remember seeing the truck go back past me on this big road. And so in my mind, I'm glad I was able to circumvent death and go a different way home. Because that's, again, the way our minds think when we're little. In the orchard, though, there's tree branches, there's rocks, there's stuff. And it's hard enough for me to ride my bike through there, but I'm also carrying this bag of lemon juice with this bottle of lemon juice. I can't get through this. In the process of me trying to get over rocks and whatever, it fell out of my hands, hits the ground, completely breaks open, and now I don't have lemon juice. And all I can do is just go home. So, did you buy lemon juice? Yeah. Where is it? I don't have it. It's broken. It's in the orchard. Well, what happened? And I just told them the story that I just told you. Well, there was a monster truck that was going to kill me, and I couldn't do that. So I had to come the other way. These are the stories of our life. So how do we get through these things? I'll also say this. My grandfather, when I was a teenager, so I told you when I was about 8 years old. Now I'm a teenager. I'm 18. I'm working at a restaurant called the Golden Corral Restaurant. You may remember that. Back in the day, when I was working there in the 80s, when I was a teenager, it was like a sizzler, like a steakhouse. Now it's more like a buffet. Anyway, at the steakhouse, I did some things called, I was a meat cutter for a while. I cut all the different kinds of sirloins and ribeyes and filet mignons and put it all together. And so I was the meat cutter of this Golden Corral restaurant. The first time I was supposed to do this on my own, the guy who trained me, who was my friend, he was gone for the week. He says, "Can you cover for me this week while I'm gone on vacation?" Yeah, so I did. I was cutting this meat, and so, but I remember I had a real feeling of anxiety. I thought, it's Friday, that's a big weekend, we got to get all this meat cut. I'm kind of nervous about that, and so I'm trying to think about what I can do with that. I was doing this, but I got kind of, with my anxiety, I mean, this has to work. I mean, I'm the only one that can do this because the manager of the restaurant doesn't know how to cut this. And so if I don't do this, it doesn't get done. And then the store's not even going to be open on the weekend. And that was too much for me to handle. So I remember I said, because my grandfather that I was mentioning to you was also a butcher back in the 50s. And this is a picture of what it was like when he was a butcher. I remembered 30 years later in the 80s that he was a butcher. And so while I was going through this anxiety in my mind, I decided to say a little prayer. And I just said, Heavenly Father, if Grandpa's not doing anything, I could really use his help. All I can tell you is that I had this real peace come over me. I don't remember hearing or necessarily seeing anything, but I felt this really good peace that came over me that calmed me down. I was able to go through the processes, cut everything up, make all the steaks. The weights were right. The percentages were right. The hamburger percentages were all correct and all of that. And so the day went fine. What's interesting, so the day went fine, and that's all I thought about it. It was, a year, 6 months, a year later when I was on my mission. I think the Holy Ghost gave me a little more of a little ding. He says, do you remember when you got through that situation and your grandpa helped you? Maybe you ought to tell your dad about it. You never did tell your dad about that experience, and I didn't. So on my mission, I made a little cassette tape recording. I said, Dad, I need to tell you what happened. When you're 18, things went fine, so you figure life is fine. I didn't have the spiritual maturity yet to say anything about it. But on my mission I did, and I said, Dad, I want to tell you this story. And I told him what I just told you. I said, Grandpa helped me in the meat cutting room there for the Golden Corral. I said, it was a really awesome experience. I felt peace and comfort, and I'm so grateful for that. So I was able to tell Dad those experiences. Again, back to the Book of Mormon. This is what happened to me spiritually in my own life in 1980, 86. Those are what we're talking about with your spiritual experiences and all of your experiences. And so that everyone else can grab hold of that and go, oh, so that helped you. Okay, that can maybe help me. That's the idea. We're trying to help each other. I want to tell you okay, we're doing good. I call it, well, one more story. Remember my Uncle Pete? He was the guy that was at Normandy. In the 1990s, he was invited back. This is when Clinton was president. They had a 50-year anniversary at Normandy Beach. And so he went back for that. When he went there, he got to where this is all set up where the dignitaries would sit. There's chairs everywhere for this big celebration. And when he got there, he talked to some of the ushers and he goes, where do you want me to sit? And the usher just says, I'm not sure. Go talk to that guy. He can tell you. Go up there and talk to him. So then he went up to the next usher. Where do you want me to sit? And he said, I'm not sure. Go ask that guy. He might know where you're supposed to sit. This happened 3 and 4 times. And now he's up at the front where like the big tables are, where the dignitaries are going to be sitting. And he says to the guy, where do you want me to sit? And that one, he turned to him and just said, you can sit anywhere you damn well please. I love that story. The honor behind it, the experiences were so deep and poignant. And so, before I tell you the greatest love story you've ever heard, I'm going to tell you one last thing. What we talk about in our company is called 5 minutes more. What would I do if I could just have 5 more minutes and talk to whoever I wanted to my own father, my grandfather, my grandmother, my parents? 5 more minutes. What would I say? What would you say if you had 5 minutes? I will give you a little experience. I had a daughter that passed away, about 10 years ago from the muscular dystrophy that we talked about. And when she passed away, she gave me a phone call as I was coming home from work. My wife called me and said, "You're going to want to get to the hospital. This one's different than the other times that she's been in the hospital. Come now." I raced up to Ogden to get to the hospital. My daughter called me on the phone and said her goodbyes. And I just said, "Brittany, I understand. I'm going to go pick up your sister as fast as I can, and then I'm going to race up to the hospital as quick as I can get there." I said, "But if heaven is calling, don't wait for me. It's okay. If heaven's calling, you can go." Happily, when I got there, she had about 5 minutes left. What do you say when there's 5 minutes left? You'll have whatever experience you have. My experience was this. There's nothing more to say, nothing more to explain, nothing more to talk about. All you say is, "I love you." And you say it over and over. I wanted her to know that. I want that to be the last thing she hears as she enters the spirit world, is that I loved her. So, what would we do if we had 5 more minutes? Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, and then I'm going to turn some time to my associate here that's fantastic. The greatest love story I've ever heard is this. Again, back to my cousin, or my Uncle Pete. He had a girlfriend while he was in World War II. He wrote her letters. She wrote him letters. He was always in very difficult circumstances, like Normandy. And during those times, letters didn't make it in or out because just too much. So at the end of the War Department brought all these letters back to both of them, him and his girlfriend, and just kind of unloaded them. "We're really sorry. Here's all of your letters. We couldn't get them through or back and forth, but here they all are." Those two, Pete and his, at the time, girlfriend, decided, instead of just blitzing through and opening up all these letters about these quite literal love letters. Can you imagine? He's writing letters to her, not knowing if he's going to live. She's writing letters to him, not knowing if he's going to live, if he's even going to come back. Those are raw, real love letters. Instead of blitzing through all those letters and reading them all right then, they said, "Why don't we open up one every year on our anniversary?" And they did that for 60 years. If you can imagine opening a letter that's 60 years old and reading about how they feel about each other, those moments when you can look at each other and say, "Is that how you feel about me? You love me that much?" And vice versa, "You love me that much?" Those kinds of experiences are real. And that kind of a love story, you can't even stage it. It just happened to happen. And so these are experiences that we want to capture with you, that we can do with what we do in our business. And so I'm going to turn a little bit of time over to Michelle. She's going to talk a little bit about this as well.
Hi. I just want to tell you a little bit about my mom. She was born in 1926, older than everyone in the room. She had some awesome parents and a great family. None of them were members of the church back then, but she did tell me she remembered listening to music and the spoken word on the radio. And I didn't think she was right. How in the world could you have been listening to that as a child in Boston? Well, Falmouth, but in Massachusetts. And so I Googled it, and she was right. It started and it was a national program, and she was able to hear about it. And that was her first introduction to the church when she was very small. And her first introduction to the church that she would then join 40 years later. She didn't know that at the time. She attended Boston College in the 1940s. That is not something that women did in the 1940s. She even got a pilot's license, something else that women did not usually do. Imagine all the things that she's seen in her life. Cars, wars, telephones, computers, space travel, the internet, any kind of technology. I would love to hear what her life was like back then. I would love to hear her conversion story. I would love to hear more stories. My mom is now almost 99 years old. And yes, she is still with us. However, she isn't able to tell me much of anything about these things. If I had known Doug just 3 years ago, I would have been able to get many more of her stories preserved. What I wouldn't give for that 5 more minutes with my mom, able to tell me the stories that she has. So what do I do now? Now that she can't tell me her stories, well, it's up to me and my brother. He was 13 years older than I am, and so it's a whole different lifetime before I was even born. It's up to me and my brother to tell her stories, all that we can. Together we can tell them, and it might be too late for us to hear them from her, but it's not too late for us to be her voice and tell them to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So my words of advice: don't wait too long, but don't think it's too late either.
Thank you, Michelle. Beautiful experience. So I'll just say, so what is the next step? What can we do? Booth is just right out through that door. Happy to visit with you. We can go ahead and schedule times with you. We do have a special, it's just a $500 down payment to get you on the schedule. And that schedule can be anytime you want it to be, anytime this year. And we can adjust it according to what you'd like to do. But we can get you on the schedule. We come to you. We help you put the stories together, and I do the interviewing. And I love hearing your stories so that you can put this all together. It's about a 2.5 hour process, a 2.5 hour interview. We talk about everything in your life history, put it all together on a video with music and your family pictures. In fact, this is a picture done of my daughter that I mentioned to you. She was in a wheelchair, so we had a drawing done of her, of what it would look like when she's able to go to the Savior and jump out of that wheelchair and go see Him. Very, I don't have good words for that. Poignant, exquisite. It's deeper. You've always heard the phrase, you didn't realize you could love that much. Probably because there's some pain involved too. I had some great experiences with my daughter, and she still is with me now. She's with me now as much as she was even before she passed away. And she's been guiding me in my life. Dad, maybe you should do this with your career. Do these kinds of things. And it's like, well, okay, we'll see. Do I have the faith to move forward? Grateful for my family. So this is, I come to you. We can get you on the schedule that works for you. And so I look forward to visiting with you just right outside this door. There's my booth. And so happy to visit with anyone and everyone about that and move forward. So let's record the stories and let's do this for you. And I appreciate your time with you today, and God bless. Thank you very much.